Welcome to Lesson 19. This is one of the more important of the lessons because it gives us a look at what it would take, what would it be like to turn our school systems into something comparable to the best school systems in the world. So even though this is temporarily on hold in Maryland, I am confident that it will rise again as soon as the COVID-19 scare is over and their budgets get back in shape. The lesson title is Maryland's Program to Become a World-Class System. It's a good example of what it takes in terms of complexity and in terms of cost to get a really quality system. Lessons 17 and 18 deal with bona fide success stories. Maryland is being featured because they have begun the journey to move to a world-class education system. This is an excellent example of what it takes to match the top-tier global systems. In March of 2020, their legislature passed a very comprehensive proposal to make dramatic changes in their current system. The bill passed the House on a strictly party vote of 96 to 41. Democrats are in the majority, and a Senate vote of 37 to 9 with 6 Republicans supporting the proposal. The governor is a Republican. He vetoed the bill because of no identified source of funding. The bill would set in place a 10-year plan to expand pre-kindergarten, increase funding to schools with high percentage of poor, special education or limited English students, raise teacher pay and increase standards, and add more programs to ensure that all students are prepared for college and careers. The underlying goal of the plan will increase the proportion of Maryland school graduates who are college and career ready. They abbreviated as CCR, from a current figure of 40% to 80%. CCR is a definition unique to Maryland, and they set this standard. The word career is important because it is the vocational path taken by many students. They are focused on obtaining a career certificate that will immediately lead to employment after high school. In top-tiered systems around the globe, a majority of the students choose a vocational path. Maryland has always prided itself for their good education, so the revelation that only 40% of their students were properly trained was difficult to accept. This fact was motivational for the study team because they have a major problem that needs to be solved. Here's some history. When the governor and the General Assembly created the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education, they recognized that the fate of our state and the opportunities it creates for our children and grandchildren to enjoy successful careers and rewarding lives depends upon the quality, equal access, and effectiveness of our pre-K to 12 education in every zip code across the state. Early on in the study, the Commission asked, "Where are Maryland schools today?" We were surprised to learn that in terms of student learning outcomes, we are neither where we thought we would be, nor where we need to be. Less than half of kindergartners are entering school ready to learn, and fewer than 40% of the students are graduating from high school truly college and career ready. Here's where they thought they stood. They had a really good ranking. Maryland ranks now number 4 in the national school ranking, according to Education Week magazine. They base their rankings on K-12 academics, equality, and school funding, and that was posted on September the 6th, 2019. They have been seeing a graduation rate of around 80%, 87%, which is very good, and high rankings. Now look at the 40% CCR mentioned above. Once they get serious about assessing their graduates and defining standards influenced by international comparisons, they realize that only 40% were properly educated. This is an eye-opening realization. They're not even close to where they thought they were. This is a reflection of how bad the entire U.S. school system is. Only by benchmarking with international systems can we see how we're really doing. The Commission's charge also showed that state leaders understand that in today's interconnected global economy, the benchmark for educational quality is not just what is happening in the top performing states in this country, but also in countries around the world where students are greatly outdistancing ours, achieving at higher levels and with much more equity of outcomes. Recall the title from my speech, Education, the World's Largest Competition, the Key to Future Economic Viability. Because we are in a global economy, we must understand that we are competing against every nation in the world. One of the most fundamental elements of this competition is education. Without well-educated workers, we will gradually lose our competitive edge, and by the way, it's already happening. Here's a fundamental realization. After examining the education systems of countries in which all students across the board, including students who typically perform poorly in our country, are performing much better than in the United States, the Commission concluded that the problem is not the students. The problem is the system, meaning the school system and the system of social, health, and income supports outside of the school. Their conclusion: the system must be changed. We will model the best systems in the world. Reference reports. There are two key references for this work, and the first is the Kirwan Report, formerly titled Maryland Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education, Interim Report, January 2019, 243 pages. The second report is an economic assessment of Kirwan Commission recommendations, November 2019, 76 pages. Both of these reports can be easily downloaded from the web. Although the Kirwan Report is very complex, it basically does three things. Number one, it makes significant increases in resources dedicated to educating Maryland's poor. Number two, it makes a 25% increase in teachers' salaries. And number three, it adds 15,000 more teachers. The proposed system is expensive. Current state budget is $46.6 billion, with over $7 billion allocated to education. The cost of the new system in year 10 adds $3.8 billion. So it's a little over half. Addition, another 50% increase in the school budget to the education budget. But $2.1 billion of other state expenses will be reduced for a net cost of $1.7 billion. After year 10, full implementation, the ed system costs remain the same in 2020 dollars, but the savings in year 18 grow to $6.3 billion as more and more graduates enter the Maryland economy at higher salaries, pay higher taxes with fewer incarcerations, and welfare draws and state funds diminish. Looking at the cash flows from year 1 to year 30, we see that the system breaks even in year 14. In other words, the cost of $3.8 billion is offset by a savings of $3.8 billion. By the end of year 25, the state recoups all of its expenditures and begins to save money. The cumulative savings in year 30 would be $11.8 billion. I have presented something that if you want to study it, you're going to have to stop the video and take a look at it. But from the ROI report that I referenced earlier, the economic analysis, this is a page that shows the complete cost and benefits savings. And down in the lower corner, you could see the $11 billion in actual savings after the project cost has been covered. that is going to accrue to the state of Maryland. If this were a project in a business organization, it would be a difficult sell because a program with a break-even of 14 years and a full payback by the end of 25 years is not very appealing. The marketplace changes too much in those time intervals. But the state of Maryland is not a business. Somehow they must stop building prisons, giving out more and more welfare, etc. Education is the only path to success to reduce these social expenses. The issue, of course, is will the quality of the students increase from 40% to 80%, and will there be jobs for them to take when they graduate? Future jobs will require more education, so this project is the only answer. We've already talked about the state of Massachusetts, but here's an interesting comparison. What we see is that in 1993, both Maryland and Massachusetts had personal incomes per capita of around $25,000. And by 2018, the per capita income in Massachusetts has significantly outpaced the growth of personal incomes in Maryland. And we attribute that to the fact that their education system is doing exactly what the financial analysis said that will happen to Maryland. We don't know anything about incarcerations in Massachusetts, but we do see that salaries have gone up, consequently taxes have gone up, and draws on welfare have gone down. The table shows this extra personal income, and it doesn't show fewer draws on government funds, but we know they're there. We will now wrap up this lesson with a video featuring Dr. William Kerwin, the leader of the project team, as he discusses some of the aspects of the Maryland education system, the new proposal. Dr. Kerwin is the Chancellor Emeritus of the Maryland University System. He holds 3 degrees in mathematics all the way through the PhD and spent 15 years as a math professor at the University of Maryland and 4 years as the head of the math department. He will use the term CTE. This means career and technical education, often referred to as the vocational path.
I just wanted to observe that almost without exception, when I walk into the room, the general assumption is that Maryland students are doing just fine. After all, Maryland was named the top education system in the U.S. for 5 years in a row and is currently ranked 5th. The assumption, however, turns to shock when I show them the data on student outcomes. So, for example, that the NAEP scores, everyone knows NAEP is the National Assessment of Education Progress. It is given across the country in every state. So this is not a different test in Maryland than it is in some other state. It's the same test, and here are some results from our NAEP scores in 2015. So Maryland is very much in the middle of the pack on these NAEP scores. The PARCC proficiency rates, as we see here, are trending up slightly in most cases, but at a modest rate. But then if you look at what's happening in the U.S. versus other countries, we've seen this data before, but you kind of put this together, and Maryland is in the middle of the pack in the U.S., at least on student outcome scores, and in the middle of the pack against other developed countries. So people are quite frankly shocked when they see this. And frequently, and I certainly heard this with the Howard County Chamber, that this is not acceptable. Something's got to change. There's also a general assumption that as a state, we are taking care of kids with special needs. So we know that from our work that Maryland ranks 11th in per student expenditures. We have the highest median income, but people can't believe it, and we couldn't around the table, when we learned that Maryland spends 5% less on schools serving poor students than those serving wealthy communities. There's also a general assumption that we are producing graduates to meet Maryland's workforce needs. Lots of people talk about the jobs of the future. Georgetown University put out this report that sort of parallels what others have said. Almost, over 2/3 of the jobs will require some sort of post-secondary certification. And in Maryland, right now, only 47% of adults have a college degree, and 3% have some sort of high-quality post-secondary certificate. So we've got a big gap between what will be needed in the future and where we are as a state. And one of the answers has got to be CTE, but less than 25% of our graduates complete a career in CTE. So clearly we have to upgrade the CTE, scale it up across the state, but also get people over the assumption that CTE is a lesser track if Maryland is going to complete globally. There's also an assumption that we have an ample supply of high-quality teachers. And here's the hires into Maryland schools, and I want you to focus on the red bars. The smallest bar there are newly minted Maryland-prepared teachers. Just to reinforce this point, I asked for some data about students entering College Park in Towson who wanted to go into teacher ed. Now, Maryland College Park, which has very high admission standards, admitted 4,000 freshmen last year, roughly. Guess how many chose teaching as a career option? 1%. 1% of those students wanted to go into teaching as a career. Towson admits and Towson is supposed to be our big teaching producer. Roughly 3,000 students, and only 5% chose to go into teaching. And in every case, both Towson and College Park, those that chose to go into teaching were at the lowest end of the admissions pool at the institutions. So taken all together, this is not a pretty picture for our state. We have also learned, and this I want to celebrate, that Maryland schools and school systems are doing many of the things we know that need to be done. And they're doing, in many cases, doing them very well. So as part of our work, we certainly don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Indeed, we need to build on the many good initiatives that have been launched in our state. But if we're honest with ourselves, we must admit that this good work going on in Maryland is far from systemic. Too many Maryland children are being left behind, and unfortunately, these tend to be disproportionately low income and minority students. But when you look at the PISA scores, we have no reason to feel complacent about the education of any of our children. are getting. Now, through our work as a commission, we have learned and have general agreement on what needs to be done to remedy these circumstances. We must invest in high-quality early childhood education. We must invest in supporting students with special needs. We must invest in building an ample supply of high-quality teachers and administrators. We must elevate the teaching profession and make it an attractive career for our best and brightest students, so that 30% of the students who go to College Park want a major in education. 40% of those that go to Towson want a major in education. We must build the pathways to ensure that most students are on track for college and career readiness by the end of the 10th grade, and nearly all by the end of high school. We must build rigorous college and career pathways that allow students to graduate from high school with significant college credits, even an AA degree, and CTE pathways aligned with industry standards. Now, to do all these things, the state will need to invest significant money at the state level and from the local jurisdictions. And here's the rub. In this era of fiscal constraint and strict accountability, simply asking for more money to continue with existing practices has little or no chance of success. Believe me, I have heard that as I've traveled around the state as well. We need a bold plan with a high degree of accountability. Anything less will, in my opinion, relegate our report to the round file. We have all worked too hard to allow that to happen. As a commission, we have been given a rare opportunity, one that comes along once every several decades at best. Something extraordinarily important for our state and for future generation of Marylanders is within our grasp. For it to happen, we must pull together and get this work done. There will be times when we must all be willing to give a little on matters we consider important to get a lot for the future of our state. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but as I thought about where we are and what needs to be done for our students and the future of our state, I could not help but recall a quote attributed to JFK. If not us, who? If not now, when? So, let's get on with our work.